Welcome you all to this fourth lecture of the second week related to history of Arabic literature. While we are discussing themes related to the Arabic language and literature in the Umayyad times. We have seen different facets of the literary enterprise during the Umayyad times, starting from the historical background, the political atmosphere, the social structure of the society, and the points of departure from the early age, that was the early Islamic period, in a trajectory of time starting from the pre-Islamic period. So we have seen poetry, we have seen prose, we have seen literary criticism. Now, the Umayyad times saw for the first time in the history of the Arabian peoples, some initiations in regard to the collection and composition of the compendiums or writing, codification, while they embarked upon the process of collecting and composing the things, preparing the compendiums. So we'll be having that the Umayyad period that ends on 750. It marks the beginning of the systematic knowledge organization. Before that, knowledge was not organized. In pre-Islamic period, there were the oral traditions, chiefly focusing on poetry, as well as some anecdotes, amthal, etc. In early Islamic period, we find emergence of the Islamic sciences, which were given birth by Islam as a theological entity, as a religion, with Arabic as the standard language, official language, the canonical language of Islam. So at that time, we find some sciences, chiefly the religious sciences like the Quran, Tafsir, Hadith, etc., alongside some other sciences like the Al-Maghazi, As-Siyar, etc., besides Ahadith Nabawiyah, or sayings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But again, during the early Islamic period, the knowledge system was not organized, it was not codified. It was only in the Umayyad times that we find in the collections of several compendiums, several branches of knowledge, like sayings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, in a trajectory that comprises of gathering oral traditions alongside the at-ta'alif. So the first aspect was al-jama, and the second aspect was at-ta'alif, that is collection and composition or codification. These two steps are the first. These are the first two steps related to the written organization of knowledge. It laid the foundation of Arabic prose, science, and religious studies. Arabic prose, as we find in the domains of oratory, correspondence, both administrative correspondence and correspondence between individuals, which are known as Rasail al-Ikhwaniyya, alongside the sciences, Islamic sciences, and sciences proper, as we find that some of the rulers for the Umayyad times, they were very much they took much interest while patronizing the sciences, the scientific culture, and fostering scientific culture. This period witnessed transition from oral to written culture, forming the basis of Arabic prose and scholarship, uh, which later on is got represented by volumes of hundreds of volumes of prose and poetry, as we find in the Abbasid times, because the Umayyad time, the Umayyad phase was a transitory phase from the early Islamic period to the golden period of Arab civilization and culture, epitomized by Baghdad, that is the Baghdadi culture. So there was the transition from oral to written culture, forming the basis of Arabic prose and scholarship. Early Muslim scholars aimed to preserve authenticity and systematize learning. So it was Amanatul Naql, authenticity, while narrating the literary legacy, or be it the religious legacy, Islam's cultural legacy. So Amanatul Naql was there to preserve the authenticity and systematize the knowledge or the learning process. Tanzim al-ilm. This Tanzim al-ilm, Amanatul Naql and Tanzim al-ilm, coupled with codifications in diverse ways, like codification of grammar, and so that there's no way, no room for sort of disruptions or anything that would be playing havoc with the purity of Arabic language, which was used especially for the canonical purposes or the liturgical purposes, like Salat, Ada Salat, etc. So here, Amanat Naql was necessary so that there is no room for unauthentic elements finding their ways to the domain of the Muslim sciences or the companions of the Muslim sciences or the Muslim science legacy, alongside organizing the way to acquire the knowledge uh, through theoretical organization of the themes of the disciplines, and followed by other means which would be institutional and otherwise. So systematizing the learning and learning process. Expansion of the Islamic State required preservation of Quran, Hadith, and Arabic language, because Arabic stood as the nucleus of Islam, as with the in the especially in the backdrop of the canonical texts, that is primarily the Quran and Hadith being in Arabic. So it necessitated preservation of Quran. That's why this was, and we must recollect that this was undertaken way back during the times of glorious caliphate, while Hadrat Osman Zin Nurain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he assigned this task to select a bench of or a committee of Sahaba, and among the Kutabul Wahi, who were scribes of the prophetic traditions. And then we find the standardized Holy Quran with the four versions, 4 copies sent to different parts, and the rest of the things, that is the manuscripts, parchments, scattered segments, to be considered as invalid, as we find in the history of the compilation of the holy text, of the Quranic text, followed by al-ahadith, where there were necessity to compile the ahadith. At the first stage, it was avoided so that there should not be any confusion, any minglings, any potential minglings between the Quranic text and the non-Quranic text, because majority of the things were related to, it rested upon the collective memory of the masses, Of course, we find that each and every aspect, each and every segment, all the parts of the Holy Quran were written, preserved, first in memory, collective memory, second in parchments, in parts of segments of paper, etc., or the medieval means of preserving the knowledge. But only the thing is that it was not preserved before that in a volume, in a compendium, which is known as mushaf. So it occurred. It happened only at the as when Hazrat Osman Zinnuran commissioned the compilation of the Holy Quran. So hadith, compilation of hadith was a later phenomenon. Besides the Arabic language, legacy of Arabic language and literature, Abdul Malik encouraged the standardization of records, and he renovated, he reconstructed the already the secretariat system or institution that was founded for the first time in Arabian history by Hazrat Umar, as it has been pointed out. But he encouraged the standardization of records alongside other things related to the monetary policy, the coinage, etc. Religious, linguistic, and political needs drove the compilation of knowledge. So there was the religious need because the time saw a great expansion of Islam as a religion, and the linguistic need was is to be seen in the backdrop of the people, non-Arab Arabian peoples converting to the Islamic mold of religion, becoming Muslims with their language in the background, which they had to forego. Hence, they were half. They learned the Arabic language. Arabic language for the first generation was among such peoples was not the first language. Rather, it was the second language. So it led to the linguistic confusions, corruptions, as we find, and that posed some serious questions related to the purity of that part of language which is which was needed for the standard religious purposes or the liturgical purposes, alongside the political needs, because of again this political and geographic expansion. It drove the compilation of knowledge. Cultural awareness led to the recording poems, wisdom, and tribal history. So now the Arabs had their own consciousness of culture, their cultural identity, and that was instrumental in driving them in the aspect of codification stage that's represented by recording the legacy, including poem, wisdom, and tribal history. Here, wisdom is al-hikmah. Al-hikmah. It's not philosophy because it was only in a literary stage that during the Abbasid times that wisdom was purely like philosophy. The key scholars in the domain of the al-jam'a wa ta'lif, that is collection and composition, or the preparation of the compendiums, we can simply say compendiums. Preparation of the compendiums. Ibn Shahab al-Zuhri and others who compiled early hadith and maghazi under Umayyad patronage. Urwa ibn Zubair who collected early historical and biographical material. Hamad al-Rawiya, Khalaf al-Ahmar, who preserved pre-Islamic poetry and genealogies. Al-Ansab, genealogy, that is Al-Ansab. Khalid ibn Yazid promoted early scientific translations and compilations from Greek and Persian, as it has been pointed out by historians that he had translated some scientific texts, Greek and Persian, into Arabic. So in this sequence, we find that Khalid ibn Yazid was the first, even before Ibn al-Muqaffa and others in this domain of translation, translating the scientific texts from other cultures. The cultural and intellectual significance of these compilations could be best gauged in the very facts that we find that shifted the Arab culture from memorization to documentation. So first it was memorization, it was collective memory, where the legacy was a part of were preserved from one generation to another uh, through that collective memory. So here the chain was not documented, but it was based on memorization. But here we find a paradigm shift where we find that memorization is outspaced or replaced by documentation. It's extended the Arabic prose, grammar, and terminology. It was the beginning of these things, the terminologies. Why? Because it stands for terminologies stand for specific concepts related to sciences, whether these sciences are like related to theology, if they are the theological sciences or sciences proper. So even when we find the religious sciences emerging from the womb of Islam itself, like tafsir and hadith and fiqh and maghazi, etc., etc., we'll be having these terminologies. These like al hadith al nawawi, for example, al isnad, for example, as salat, for example, al hajj, or as zakat, etc. So these were or mawarith, for example, al miras al mawarith. So these were the religious terms that were given by Islam. So this uh, was the standard of terminology alongside the scientific terminologies in the backdrop of translation, as we find in regard to the beginning we have with the Khalid ibn Yazid during the Abbasid times. So it actually prepared the ground for Abbasid encyclopedism and scientific research. Abbasid times, as we have seen, will be seeing, it has been, it is usually projected and rightly projected that the Abbasid times epitomize the paragon of Arab Islamic culture. So that paragon of culture in sciences, in literatures, in letters, in arts, in crafts, in the cultural edifices, in all their dimensions. That was not a byproduct of single decade or just a few decades. Rather, it requires development of such magnitude requires lots of rather sometimes centuries of enterprise and craftsmanship legacy. So it was the Umayyad period that paved the ground, prepared the ground for the Abbasid encyclopedism and scientific research, where we find all the sciences, experimental sciences, theoretical sciences, religious sciences, social sciences, humanities, constructing a gigantic, a glorious edifice of its own, uh, in which we take pride. Usually, the Arabs take pride, or the entire world takes pride, because that was the Abbasid culture was the foremost culture during the Middle Ages. The moment of collection and compilation was the birth of Arabic scholarship. It united preservation, organization, and authorship of Islamic heritage. It played the role of foundation for the later intellectual and literary flourishing in the Abbasid period. So it was all about like tamheed or or muqaddima, something like prelude or preface. of what? Of the golden period, that is the Abbasid period. So the foundations we have during this period. So with this, we are coming to the end of this lecture. Thank you very much.